Hey, all you atheists, druids, new converts, sage disciples, and even you who think life might somewhere have meaning. Welcome. My non-university unstudents, welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor, a show where we pause to think. Remember when I went to the dentist several months ago and I gave you a glowing report? Remember? No? Oh well, that doesn't matter. I went to the dentist 2 months ago for my semi-annual cleaning. He sent me to a periodontal specialist because there was bone deterioration around an implant in my lower jaw, and last week the procedure itself took place. Well, the plan was to place more cadaver bone. Yes, I am the Walking Dead. I have cadaver bone in my jaw and my back, and it's funny, now that I think of it, sometimes when we have a full moon around 2 in the morning, I get these strange cravings for non-GMO, locally sourced human flesh. Maybe it's the cadaver bone? Anyway, the plan that the periodontist had was to place more cadaver bone around that stud in my jaw and hope it would grow in. So yeah, we get in the chair, he injects me with numbing agent, lidocaine, I don't know. He waits 12 minutes, then he begins cutting. Now, I hate, yes, Jerry, hate the dentist for this very reason. Oral pain is just no picnic. So he cuts and scrapes and cuts, and if you can believe it, there's a nerve in his way that he must have tried, 6, 7 times of re-injecting still more lidocaine, because each time he tries to saw through it, I think that's what he was doing. I just couldn't ask him because I get nauseous. I get nauseated imagining the spectacle in my mind, but he was trying each time to saw through it, all to no avail. Each prodding, each sawing of that nerve nearly caused me to fly out of the chair. And the periodontist who said, "Oh, it'll take us about an hour procedure," it took 1 hour 45 minutes. Sorrowfully, there was just too much bone deterioration to save the stud, so he just, gulp, cut it out, pried it out. And I'm not kidding, by the time I sat up to finally leave, there were tears coming out of my eyes. Hoochie mama! Now what? I don't know. I go back and see him again in a month and have the sutures removed, and we'll go from there. But my takeaway for all you good people, please, for the love of all things good and upright, don't grow old. Let me move from talking about the pain I just endured in my body to more on what it means to be human, enfleshed beings, nefeshes, living souls. My last UU episode was on human bodies and the definition of personhood. We looked at some broken societal developments through the lens of the 2015 SCOTUS quick-baked, maybe it's quack-baked, the 2015 Obergefell ruling, and we saw that even though SCOTUS created a brand new legal right, they based it on a non-defined notion of personhood. And in that show, I said that SCOTUS had just taken the philosophy that had been slow cooking on college campuses and ensconced it legally as the law of the land. I swear, folks, I live in a Salvador Dali painting. Today I want to think more pointedly with you about that slow-cooked philosophy. In a biblical Christian worldview, we are made well aware of selfishness. The Bible's replete with examples of selfishness and the sin of selfishness, pride of selfishness, the narrowness, the folly of selfishness. And yes, at a foundational level, what we're witnessing today is indeed selfishness gone amok. But it's far more than that. We are now giddily feeding a slow-cooked college philosophy. What is that philosophy? You are your own microcosm. No, you are your own world. And in your own world, you are supreme. Nice to meet you, King Gary. Nice to meet you, Queen Emily. Nice to meet you, Lord Jesse. Happy to meet you, Your Highness, Milady Becky. Each person we're being brainwashed. Each person is their own God, the ruler of their own domain, an imperial power of the highest order. So, what does it mean to be a person? Whatever the hell you say it means. It's that simple. The self is a God. That the self is now celebrated as the arbiter of all reality, it's really unprecedented. Arbiter means one who settles a dispute. It's no longer goodness or reason or common sense or the Bible that are our arbiters. And queso sagrado, for all of the clamor, it's not really even justice that is the esteemed arbiter. No, it is each self. The self, one's own opinion, is now the standard by which disputes are settled. And we hardly need to pause to see why American culture, and with it the Christian subculture, is spinning into chaos swiftly. Each self equals the arbiter for reality? How? How can 7 billion supreme arbiters exist side by each? No, it's runaway chaos. And in all of this, philosophical chaos is producing societal chaos. Lies about reality are fomenting lies inside society. And this self as final arbiter is why we are seeing transgenders and their co-conspirators taking over the public school system. Right? I mean, who the bajonk is anyone else to tell someone who's transitioning that they should not be evangelizing in the public schools on behalf of trans identities? How dare you question someone else's self? They're only 7 years old? Bah, no matter. Even at age 7, we're being told the self is a microcosm. No, a God. And sorry to belabor this subpoint, but I signed up for the New York Times daily email blast. I like to see what propaganda is being churned out. And they just reported that the Biden administration wants to spend $20 billion on pre-K education programs for kids 3 and 4 years old. And it's being rolled out as a social improvement policy. The New York Times notes that kids who undergo pre-education do not, in fact, do better in school later, but they are less likely to be involved in crimes later in life. And I mean, look, it sounds benign enough, right? Who's against staving off crime? But what the Times didn't say? These school programs involve systemic and epic reprogramming. What percentage of kids will now be exposed to the, air quotes, liberation of a transgender possible existence? Or the glory of a BLM worldview? Oh, the governmental doublespeak is insidious. I actually believe it's demonic when it's happening down at systemic levels. Hey, I Love it when folks help promote this bald man's show. And it's so easy. Just copy and paste a URL link from Facebook or Libsyn or YouTube or iTunes. Put that in your social media post. Wham, bam, dunzo. Friends who've recently done just that? Scott M., Daniel F., Victor S., Lauren R., and Pope Francis. Thanks sincerely. Or that the self is now touted as the telos for human reality?
Oh, I totes get it. I am the answer I've been looking for.
Unprecedented. What is the end goal for you? You. Whatever version of you that is chosen by you. Telos means aim, goal, fulfillment, pleroma, omega. Again, the telos for you is you. It's weird. I mean, it's not even about achievement anymore. When I was growing up, people dreamed of working hard and achieving things and becoming something. Want to be an astronaut? Cool. You're going to do a lot of school, but you could do it. You want to be a medical doctor? Go, girl, go. Enjoy the training. But when we espoused esteem for those achievements, we knew that they involved sacrifice and hard work. We knew there was a joy involved in becoming something. Today, sacrifice? Pshaw! Becoming more than you already are? But you're you. You're the answer you've been looking for. Why grow? Why become? And this person has telos value is why we're watching the tidal wave of mediocrity sweep our society. There's hardly any esteem for excellence today. Oh my gosh, no. Instead, we're marinating in the mediocrity. Give them all a trophy. Excellence? Pshaw. I mean, that's a holdover from white racism.
Wait, what?
Or here's one, the whole notion, be your best self. Because our culture says that you, a self, is the best that it can get. Be your best self, whatever the chopped liver that even means. Well, I guess, to be consistent, it means whatever each self wants it to mean. The self is now a king, an unchallengeable God. Or here's another way this materialistic philosophy of the self as God is manifesting. There is no shame. Saying something as plainly racist as all white folks are racist? Millions are saying that now without flinching or blanching. They do it with no hard swallowing. Seriously? All whites are depraved of goodness? Really? There are 0 white people devoid of racism? Wow. What's it like to be omniscient, to know all those people's hearts? What's it like to be omniscient and know all of those people's attitudes? Shnikes. Or looting a Target and then rationalizing it as reparation for the slavery of 150 years ago? Some sincerely believe that. I mean, they're saying it to us with a straight face. How? How's that logically possible? Well, it's possible because they've had their consciences rewired to the point that they, honest to goodness, truly believe the gibberish that they're uttering. If the self is a god, then the self can say anything and it's true. And again, who are you to question their supreme self? It's gaslighting. We are being gaslighted by an illogical, slow-cooked college philosophy. No, the self is increasingly propped up as the ruler royale. No one, we're told daily, no one gets to question the self. No one outside the self gets to question or challenge the self. The self is never wrong, especially the tantrum-throwing, aggrieved self. That self is never wrong.
Stay the hell out of my lived experience.
The self is supreme. And again, that's precisely what Justice Kennedy was arguing in Obergefell. The very nature of person establishes the right to get married. What is person for Kennedy? The self. What is the self? Kennedy didn't say, so the state, the fallen state, the power-hungry state, is rushing in to fill that definitional vacuum. And to bring this full circle from last week, the self is now king over the body. I won't rehearse my stories from last week, stories about how the body is being played by the ego, manipulated by the human will as Lord. But not even the body, which is to say not even science, not even biology, gets to slow walk the power of the selfish will to choose. And it's getting increasingly weird. You are rare, my listener. You know Christianity is deeper than a thimble. Thank you for tuning in. Help me help others go deeper than a thimble. Go to Patreon, Patreon, and make a monthly pledge of $5, $20, or $50. I haven't had a $50 pledge in a while. Go and support deeper Christianity. Support thoughtful Christianity, meaningful Christianity. Patreon, Patreon, uncensored, unprofessor. It's easy to do. Thanks much. In her book, Love Thy Body, Answering Hard Questions About Life and Sexuality, Nancy Pearcey, I'm trying to get her to come on the show for an interview, Professor Nancy Pearcey writes that a root of this egocentric definition of personhood can be traced back to Charles Darwin in 1859. It was in 1859 that Darwin published his theory of evolution. Now, Darwin himself in Christian faith, he was an agnostic. Fascinating to me, he was married to a sincere woman of faith, Emma. But Darwin himself, he recognized that life, that biology appears to be designed. But as Professor Pearcey points out, because Darwin had thrown all in with the philosophy of materialism, quote, he wanted to reduce that appearance of design to an illusion. He hoped to show that although living structures seem to be teleological, and you guys, teleological again means directed to an end, driven by an end goal. Though Darwin hoped to show that although living structures seem to be teleological, in reality he said they are the result of blind, undirected forces, end quote. What is teleology in biology? Where the organ or the organism is directed toward a goal and fulfills that goal. So for instance, an eyeball is clearly designed for vision. Its telos is seeing things, and eyeballs commonly fulfill that function, fulfill that telos. Or an opposable thumb fulfills its telos when it helps the hand to grasp an object that would be difficult to grasp without that thumb. Again, in nature, things commonly fulfill their design function. Think of it. We rarely see where an organism's mouth cannot eat, or where a creature's foot does not aid in motility. Nature's pretty efficient at moving toward a telos. There's telos woven through creation. And even down inside cellular structure, the way things work makes evident that organs and limbs and abilities are built to do precise things. Science itself shows that biology moves toward directed goals and ends, a purposed telos. Scientific researchers are frequently in awe of how the cellular structure of a creature or an organ makes evident that the thing as such is fulfilling a distinct process, a reason for its being. To me, that's awesome. Charlie Darwin, His bias was to protect and esteem materialism more than it was to follow the science. And by the way, materialism means all there is in the universe is matter, chance, and energy. There is no purpose or intentional causation. There's no God directing thing. Materialism guts the universe of purpose. It eviscerates human existence of meaning. Let's just stop and be theologians for a moment. Why do people prefer materialism to theistic understandings of reality? Over and over and over and over. Because materialism gives human beings a moral out. If materialism is true, then we can stoop whomever we want. If materialism is true, we can abuse nature and people however we want. But honestly, it usually goes back to sex. Weirdly, no, foundational to the telos of our creation as male and female, it just always seems to go back to unbounded sexual options. It gives us a moral out. Sorry, get astray there for a moment. Let's go back to Chuck Darwin. His bias was to esteem materialism more than it was to follow the science. Because science, again, commonly suggests that a telos, or even better, entelechy, E-N-T-E-L-E-C-H-Y, that entelechy is at work and it drives us to a goal. So what's the best way to defend materialism? Do what Darwin did. Argue there is no plan or purpose at work in nature. I mean, today's famous, or maybe he's infamous scientist Richard Dawkins agrees with Pearcey that this was the goal of Darwin's philosophy. It was the telos of Darwin's philosophy. She wrote, quote, speaking of Dawkins, natural selection, the blind, unconscious, automatic process which Darwin discovered, has no purpose in mind, end quote. Darwin didn't discover that. He argued it. There's not a blind, unconscious, automatic process. There's entelechy at work in all beings, all creatures. But given where we are as a society today,
You are your own God. You determine your own truth. You construct your own reality.
Given where we are as a society today, we can see that the effects of Darwin's philosophical move have been immense. Professor Pearcey calls those effects seismic in their power, and it makes sense. She sums it up this way: the logic is crucial. If nature does not reveal God's will, then it is a morally neutral realm where humans may impose their will. There's nothing in nature that humans are morally obligated to respect. Nature is merely raw material to be manipulated and controlled to serve the human agenda like any other natural resource, end quote. Again, that's Professor Pearcey in her book, Love Thy Body. So, what that means is today, and we're seeing things like this, we can harvest genetic matter from the yet unborn. Morally neutral, so be it. We can sever a freckled left hand because it bothers us. Morally neutral, so be it. A little 7-year-old boy can ask to have his penis surgically removed because he's uncomfortable with it. So be it. We can euthanize an unconscious person because the cost of keeping them alive is too great. So be it. In each case, materialism argues, matter is just and only matter. There's no dignity worth protecting that's inherent in our creatureliness. Matter is just teloless matter. There's no moral consequence for doing anything. Matter is class,
just matter, teacher?
Way back in 1997, when I was working on my dissertation, I went to the United Kingdom to do some primary research on a brilliant early British Pentecostal leader named Donald G. And I extended my trip a few days and spent some time down south in London. And while I was there one Friday, I went to Westminster Abbey. Oh man, if you can believe it, back then walking into the church cost nothing, was free. When I returned to Westminster Abbey in 2008, it cost $20 to get in. Anyway, when I went inside the Abbey, my favorite church in the whole world, famous people, lots of soldiers especially, are buried in crypts throughout the church. And there on the floor inside the front door, Charlie Darwin's burial site. I stood on his headstone and I said, "Charles, I don't appreciate what you have done to humanity." It was my way of shaking the dust off my feet onto Darwin, judging him post-mortem. I mean, I have no idea where Charles Darwin stands today with God. I do know that Darwin really gobshited the human race. But here's the deal, you guys. We wanted to be gobshited. We look for reasons to ignore the speech of God. We have this amazingly common tendency.
As common as uninvited wasps at a picnic?
We have this amazingly common tendency to latch on to any explanation or idea or emotion or mood that gives us a way out from God. And Darwin's materialism, that there's no inherent design or purpose or meaning to life, it gave we sinners a dandy way out. The fool says in his heart there is no God, because the fool does not want there to be a God. Wow, man, I got the strangest recording when I called the phone company the other day. It said, "You have been connected to the correct department on the first try. This is against company policy. Please hang up and redial." Thank you, Mikey's Funnies. Let me just make one more reflection on Charles Darwin's epistemology, his theory or his construction of knowledge. He made the evidence fit his bias. Instead of like a good scientist, a scientist who allows the facts to inform his theory, Darwin placed materialism at the foundation of his tower of knowledge and then erected the rest of his system, the rest of his theory, on the basis of his prior commitment, materialism. Well, what a shock, not, that he concluded that evolution, not God, is the secret force beneath the changes in life. A faceless evolution, he argued, fosters materialism. He knew that belief in God moves dramatically against evolution as an all-explanatory theory of reality. And this commitment first dynamic is happening now with more frequency across life here in 2021. Science is being made to fit pre-chosen political agendas. Beliefs get stacked first, then reality is squeezed into the prior beliefs about reality. Faith is first, and then all else is made to square with that faith. And I guess I'm thinking, I suppose it's an unavoidable feature of human finitude, but we used to try to, at least in the hard sciences, to let the facts shape our beliefs. Or let me personalize it. When I was first working on my MA in theology, my historical theology mentor, Dr. Muller, drummed down into our heads that we must allow the actual evidence to present itself to us first, then we can run it through our interpretive grid. But we cannot force a conclusion in our research or writing. And I'll never forget writing a paper in a 1 Corinthians class for my MA program. It concerned Paul's words about, when you gather together, my spirit is there among you. 1 Corinthians 5:4. When I first began researching the passage, the historic context, I already had my mind made up that Paul was making some trans-spiritual remark. Like he was saying his soul would be present with them like a disembodied soul present among gathered embodied souls. So I wrote my paper and I squeezed all of the data, all of the phrasing, all of the understanding through that sieve. Even though the Jewish context didn't move in that direction, even though the context of the Pauline corpus didn't move in that direction, and, well, appropriately, I didn't get a good grade on the paper because I forced the conclusion. I forced my interpretation. I was smashing all the apples of reality into my applesauce churner of interpretation. I got a lousy grade. And that's exactly what Charlie D. was doing back in 1859, and now all the Darwinists are today doing, forcing reality through their interpretive grid. Even though the interpretive grid actually does damage to reality itself. Even though their interpretive grid works against the obvious notion of teleology, defies logic. Even though their interpretive grid brutalizes people's inherent dignity. And they do that even though their interpretive grid is thoroughly divisive, that it tears society into little bits of no consequence to them. Morality be damned. Those apples just have to be crushed, smashed down into applesauce.
Keep your damn mask on and don't ask questions.
My ear-glued listener, some of you are regulars. You listen weekly to the UU, and thank you truly. Do me just one more solid. Tell a thinking friend about this show. There's really nothing better than word-of-mouth advertising. Thank you very much. Let's bring this back full circle. The 2015 SCOTUS Obergefell ruling is the fruit of virtue vacuum philosophy, a morally deconstructed worldview, a materialistic, Darwinistic, telos-crushing,
Hey, there's some stray apples over there that haven't been mulched into applesauce.
a God-evacuated attitude that has been slow cooking on college campuses for 150 years. Personhood? The definition of that swings this way and that way depending on what is yearned for in the given moment. Does our nature, as embodied from the instant of conception, in any way inform personhood? Nope. Does our biology, as fundamentally female and male, and that's true not just by virtue of our genitalia, it's true by virtue of the very cellular structure of male and female bodies, our male and female cellularly structured brains, and there is no normative third option in biology. Does our biology as female and male fix or ground the definition of person? Not according to SCOTUS, not according to Anthony Kennedy. Praise God he's gone. Or if, according to the inchoate materialism undergirding the Obergefell ruling, if we have no God-breathed eternal soul that inheres our existence, aren't we just living blobs of matter? And it clearly follows that a mentally incapacitated human, whether handicapped during gestation or during adolescence or from some physical wound or even from old age, that incapacitated human is just a blob of energized matter. We can see, oh, I hope you, my listener, can see how we have arrived at this terrifying shore of human history. Again, let me clarify. Personhood is today an ambiguous term. And in the midst of that ambiguity, the state is rushing in to fill the definitional void. And when the state rushes in, we always lose our dignity, always have the rights that we were given to us by God whittled down and stripped away. Dennis Prager, a Jewish talk radio show host, is fond of saying, the bigger the state, the smaller the individual. That's how it works. The more intrusive the state, the more rights of a God-ordained definition of personhood get diminished. The more authority the state has, the less authority God-fearing, responsible moral agents have. Look, you guys, here's the deal by demographic ratios. There are those like you today who have taken the red pill. We refuse to be played by the matrix. We refuse to swallow the soma pill and the sense of peace with which it inebriates folks. We know there's more to human nature than the ego-driven self. And demographically, we represent what? 25% of the American population? But a good 55% of the American population are folks who have swallowed the blue pill of materialistic philosophy. They are simple lemmings. The Pied Piper plays his tune, and they dance the jig, euphorically dance in their pharmakia right off the edge of the cliff, drowning in the philosophic ocean. They are the common schlubs, the unwitting sheeple who are programmed by major media, educated in state colleges, or they're just hipsters who embrace materialism because it's the trendy mood of the day. But then there are the much smaller group of lever pullers. My friend Mark, to think of an analogy I used many months ago on the show, my friend Mark says there are the deceived and then there are the deceivers. The lever pullers, the power brokers, are the deceivers. They know what they're doing. They understand that a godless Darwinian materialistic philosophy is a means to their power. And that's true even when, especially when they, who now hold the levers of governmental power, when they tell us they are diminishing our rights for our good. We're here from the government, and we're here to help.
We're working for the equity of everyone, non-whites especially.
We're taxing the rich for the benefit of the little guy.
We're eliminating free speech because nobody likes hate speech.
We're stripping away your civil rights in order to protect you.
We're suspending democracy for the good of the majority.
We need to restrict your constitutional freedoms for the sake of societal freedom.
We're using protective police custody to protect you from hurting others. We only have your best interests at heart.
And so we watch as they use the courts, mayorships, the FBI to suppress and spy on and hunt down and harass and arrest those who ask questions about what they, the powers, are doing. It's an old script being played out by new actors. And the lemmings? They're totally comfortable with all of this. They like being deceived. After all, they've been told since first grade, this is in the best interest of everyone. So, last episode there was some history for you. This episode, here's some philosophy for you. And next episode, I'm going to talk about the biblical portrayal and how that compares and contrasts with this gobshited materialistic philosophy that we have been handed, and which now is the slow-cooked college philosophy that is the law of the land. For now, I want to thank you for listening. Please go and turn your beautiful God-given brains on, everybody.